Before we look at the state in terms of the general condition of my facade, we really need to look at what the facade's purpose is. Does that make sense? So what are the two primary purposes of the facade? Let's look at one at a time. So Anna, if we come to Mike, you can't just look at me like that, Christina, you've got to use that mic.
To avoid pain.
To avoid pain, yeah. Should we call it a bit different than that? We'll call it desensitizing to pain. Right? Now, I use that word specifically because desensitization is an indication that you're probably not going to be able to avoid pain, but you can detune from it as much as you possibly can. So it's one of its primary purposes of the facade, to detune from the pain as much as you can get away with. Right? Now, of course, the only problem with that is that the more you desensitize to emotional pain, the more physical pains are actually created. So you end up accepting physical pain in preference to emotional pain. So you end up having to make some basic decisions with regard to physical pain versus emotional pain. And then, of course, with the physical pains, we go searching for medical solutions to them. So, you get, in a small way, you might use painkillers, Panadol, paracetamols, all those kind of painkillers to just dull the pain. So it makes it more, the physical pain now I'm talking about, it makes it easier to manage. But the physical pain is a symptom that indicates that you've been denying emotional pain for a long time. And the physical pain is just a symptom of that. Right? So that's one of the motivations of the facade, desensitise to pain. Very important to understand that. All right, what's the second motivation of facade? If we go Laura down, thanks.
So it helps us to feel like we're something better than what we really are.
Yeah, I think that's that's not one of the two primary motivations, okay. But it is a desire of the facade, certainly. Yeah. Right? But let's look at the two primary motivations. If we go right up the back to Ben.
To get our addictions met?
It is, but that again, there's a purpose to that, which is driving that. So we want to know what is the thing driving getting our addictions met. So if we come to Laureline on this side, thank you.
So that I can continue breaking God's laws?
That is the subsequent result, but many of you are not choosing to break God's laws purposely, you think, so that's not the main motivation. So Marie on this side, and then across to Nikki if Marie doesn't get it.
Avoid feeling my terror.
Yeah, that's the one. So to avoid OID, the emotion, OID, and I write down OID. Avoid the emotion of terror. That's the reason. That's our primary motivator. Remember this. This is the area of our global refusal to feel our terror about. So it's an emotion of terror that we're trying to not feel. That drives all of what occurs above. So all the addictions are driven by that underlying motivation. Very important to understand that underlying motivation. These are the two primary motivations of your facade. We need to get that they are our primary motivations. And what happens as a result of the facade is all this other stuff. Denial right the way through, addictions, anger when we don't get our addictions and expectations met, and satisfaction or comfort, in quotations, when we do. All of that is all the result of these two motivations driven from the pain driving the facade. So the pain, remember we said yesterday, becomes the dominating controller of our life, right? So many of you have sort of seen the facade as the dominating controller, but that's just doing the job that the pain is demanding that it does, Or you could say the avoidance of the pain is demanding that it does. So avoiding pain causes you to demand that facade is engaged, and then, of course, everything that you do, your intellect, the way you use your intellect, every action you take is all just motivated to avoid the terror and avoid the pain. Right? Motivated by the pain, believing, or one of the false beliefs is that you can't feel the pain. You've got to desensitise yourself to the pain, terrified of the pain. That's the primary state of your facade. It's motivated by those two particular things. Now, in your outline, you notice under the state of the facade, there's a number of different things underneath what those two things are that actually talk about what the actual state of your facade is. So what I'd like you to do is, if we read them out one at a time, and we'll discuss them, what those primary motivators are. So what's the first motivator that you see there? Kerry, on this side.
I tell myself lies about my facade.
Yes, so this is the lies I tell myself. My brain needs to connect to my body, I think, at the moment. We believe things about the facade that are actually false, but we think they're true. So what does that mean? What kind of beliefs do we have about the facade? Well, we believe things like, my facade's protecting me. It's making my life safer and better. We even believe that we don't have one, that how we go around normally is our normal real self. We even think it's our best self, that we're putting our best foot forward. Right? But all these things are all lies about the facade. They tell you that the facade is a good thing, when actually, from God's perspective, the facade is what generates most of your sin, the new sins you create. So therefore, it's a bad thing. But we tell ourselves it's a good thing. Right? So we're already... And why do we do this? This lies about the facade. It's because of the underlying two motivations. If we tell ourselves our facade's a bad thing, then we've got to start looking at removing it. If we remove it, then what's exposed? Our terror, which we don't want to feel, and our cognizance of pain, which we don't want to be sensitive to. So we've got to tell ourselves these messages about the facade, that the facade is good for us. It's the best part of us. Most of us even tell ourselves that it's our real self. And ironically, as you'll learn in a few days' time, your real self is actually almost completely undeveloped and unrecognised for most people, because they've lived in their facade, and their facade has dominated their lives for such a long period of time that their real self is like a little tiny baby still, yet to be developed, yet to be encouraged and to grow. And we've suppressed its growth, controlled its growth in that process. So Ben, you'd like to...
So would you say that we haven't really lived from an emotional sense? 'Cause
yes,
that's what I'm feeling for myself.
Yes, definitely. Most people on this planet, while they're on Earth, have never really lived at all. They usually just lived in their facade, so that their real self has not really experienced much at all, and certainly has learnt very little. Yeah. So when we pass in the spirit world in that condition, we're totally confused, and there's a whole heap of things to learn, and we're still in that state. And often people remain in that state in the spirit world even for a long period of time before they realise that actually now they've got to start learning how to be their real self rather than being this facade that society and parents and they themselves wish to be while they're on Earth. Your facade is harder to maintain in the spirit world because people can see the colours of it. They can see what it's done to your body more easily, and so it's harder to maintain. On Earth, pretty easy to maintain because the outward appearance, we all usually die within 60 to 100 years, and it's a normal thing, so everyone looks at it and says, oh, they're normal, and you can't really tell who's in one facade and who's out of one, and so we live with that condition all of our life on Earth. Yeah. Sherry, thanks.
So that feeling of not ever knowing yourself, is that a result of like being in your facade and not knowing your
Yeah.
real self, like
Yeah.
not having that sense of who you are.
Yeah, and as we'll learn later, your real self was purposefully denied by society and your parents. In fact, this pain here, the pain associated with your terror, is really terror about being your real self. Right? Which we'll talk about later. All right, what's the next one on the list? What's the next one on this list? After the lies, if we come across here, thank you.
I tell myself my facade is serving me well.
Yeah, my facade serves me well. Now, interestingly, your facade in a way does serve you, doesn't it? Because the demanding controller of all of this is the terror of the pain. So the terror of the pain is telling the facade to do a whole heap of things, and the facade is doing them. So it is in a way serving you. The question is whether it serves me well, isn't it? That's the real question. It is, and this is where I see a majority of us believe it is serving us well, when actually it's causing more self-destruction. It's causing the degradation of our soul, our facade. Because it's in our facade that we choose to sin more, and every time we choose to sin, our soul is degraded in its condition. So our facade is certainly serving us, but it's serving our own self-destruction. It's not serving us well. Does that make sense? So, Lauleen, thanks.
I want to know if the terror of feeling my pain is about the same as what I'll do to how I inflict then pain on others.
Of course, it's very proportionate. You know, the amount of terror you have about your own pain means that you'll try to prevent that pain at pretty much any cost. And any cost means whatever is going to cost other people in particular. You're more prepared, in fact, for it to cost other people than you are for it to cost you anything. So this is why it's the cause of most of our sin, because we're engaging sin all the time, dumping stuff on other people and thinking that we're right to do it even, and thinking that it's the right thing to do. And many times those other people will accept it, and that encourages us to believe that it's the right thing as well. Because they also have the same belief about facade, that it's the right thing to expect things from each other and so forth. I had a discussion with my brother recently, didn't go very well, but it was about, you know, his expectations of me, which he's had since he was a young boy, because his father really didn't engage him very much. Our father is sort of not a non-present father. And so that meant that I was 10 or 11 years older than he. So he sort of put me in the role of father. And then, of course, put all of the expectations of what a father should do on me, which I haven't done, of course. So that makes him feel quite angry with me about all these things. And I talked to him about his expectations of me and that I don't have any of him. And he said, well, maybe you should. And that's how most people feel, that you should have expectations of each other. That's what love is. To have expectations of each other. The reality is expectations are what causes your anger. Because whenever your expectations are not met, you get angry. So, but the facade tells you that it's serving you well, it's good to have expectations of other people, you need things from other people, they need things from you. The facade handles all that. Yeah, not very good, huh? What's next? If we can go, what's next? Mike, thanks, on this side. Have we got a microphone on this side? Oh, yeah, we have. Sorry. You're right down front. Locked in there. Far away. Right.
I tell myself lies about my pain.
Yes, so tell myself lies about my pain. What kind of lies? Louisa next to.
I have two. One is that it's not as bad as it is, and one that it's way worse than it is.
Yes. we go from one to the other, don't we? We swing quite unreasonably and illogically between many different states in this place. So we tell ourselves lies that it's so big and we're never going to be able to deal with it, so the best thing to do is suppress it. And then we tell ourselves lies that it doesn't exist, even. We'll go that far as well, complete denial that it even exists. And anything in between that serves us in the situation we're in. Right, so if a person wants us to feel some pain, then we'll do that. And if a person doesn't want us to feel some pain, then we won't. Then we'll do that, and we do whatever is demanded by the situation. Yeah, and we swing, don't we, around, selecting different things to see what works, and whatever works, we do again and again and again. What's the next one? The next major heading. If we come down to Rachel.
I deny I'm terrified of experiencing my physical and emotional pain.
Yeah, so I deny I'm terrified. And many of you have done this with me the whole time I've known you. You deny you're terrified. Most of you are terrified. Well, like we've said, all of you have this, so all of you are terrified. Right? But you deny you are. If you can deny you're terrified, then you're basically denying the thing that drives all of your actions. That's going to help you to live in your facade quite a lot, isn't it? If you can deny that the terror is driving your facade, then you basically haven't admitted to yourself that that's the motivation for your facade, and so you think you're merrily going around for some other reason doing things in your facade. Yeah, so that's a problem. If you deny you're terrified, then how can you ever feel your terror? You can't. And if you can't feel your terror, you can't get below and work your way through anything else. And in addition to that, if you can't feel your terror, you're always going to have a facade. So you can basically, your life is basically now determined for the rest of your existence until you decide differently that you're going to live in a facade, or multiple facades usually. Usually we live in, like I said yesterday, one for family, one for friends, one for partner, one for children, one for work, and so forth. Yeah. Peter?
When we deny we're terrified, are we really saying, I can't be terrified? Is that really what's coming out of us?
It's not the only thing we're saying, but it certainly is one of the things we're saying. We certainly are saying, I can't be terrified, in the sense of I'm not allowed to be terrified.
I don't want terror at all cost.
Yeah, that's right. I'm basically saying to myself that it's impossible. I can't be terrified. I can't let myself feel terrified, and so forth. But also, when we're denying I'm terrified, we're even denying that we are by going, I'm not terrified. But how stupid are you thinking I'm terrified? Type of thing. We completely distance ourselves from our terror.
Yeah, I find that bit really hard, that one.
Yeah. You do it frequently, Pete. Yeah, in your day-to-day life. Frequently are terrified but deny that you are in a situation. And then your power, this is where your willpower kicks in usually. You know, you willpower your way through things. When you're really just freaked out and all you really be better off doing is just feeling how freaked out you are, you know, while you're doing things, instead of willpowering yourself through it, denying that you're freaked out. Yeah. This also attracts spirits to you who manipulate fear. So what they do is they give you messages that manipulate your fear and terror. So every time you deny your own terror, that means you are not aware of its motivations and what it's pushing you to do. And spirits love that, who are in evil condition love that, because they can now manipulate your terror to make you do things that you're not aware that you're being made to do. Your terror-based beliefs make you easily able to be manipulated. Amber?
I have a feeling that the terror is like our number one reason why we're aging so quickly and rapidly. I work in an aged care centre.
Yeah.
And they're the most terrified, like, unrelaxed, unfree-flowing people I've ever come across. Like, they freak out if dinner is like 5 minutes late. And it's very interesting seeing what happens to the physical body.
Yeah, no, as you get older, most people as they get older, they get more and more terrified.
Yeah.
right? So the older you get, the more terrified you become. And many of you think you become comfortable, but actually what you're doing is you're creating a comfort-based life in order to prevent the experience of any terror, right? So many people in old age end up alone, quite sick, unable to help themselves, which increases their own terror even more. Then they start having sort of dreams where they're in and out of the sleep state in the spirit world, and they can see many times where they're probably going to go in that location, and that freaks them out even more. And by the time they actually pass, many of them are hanging on for dear life on their deathbed. Particularly you see this in old age homes, hanging on at their deathbed for years and years and years and years, willing themselves to continue living so they don't even pass. Even though, like from one of my grandmothers, 10 years she was like that, in a bed, before she passed. Not conscious of who was visiting her and so forth. Sad, huh? Yeah, but that's the extent of terror.
And it's very fascinating seeing the different sorts of personalities and the different ways that they age and what happens to their body.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, what's the next one in our list? Come down to Denise, down the front. Thanks. Nice shirt, Wayne. The colour is real nice.
My definitions of love are corrupt.
Yes, so is that where we're at next? Lies about my pain. Definition of love are physical and emotional pain. Deny I'm terrified. Yes, you're right. Definitions of love are corrupt. I use the word corrupt purposefully to give you an indication that it's not that our definitions of love are just wrong or they're just like unformulated. They are purposefully corrupt and frequently evil. And I say that purposefully because frequently what we decide love is actually from God's perspective quite evil, and yet we still go ahead and do it. I see this happening a lot when it comes to like the soulmate issue, where people, there are some people we know, we were discussing this the other day, Mary and I, that in the time we've known them, they've had like 8 to 10 partners in 8 to 10 years. That's an indication that there's some moral corruption. There's a definition of love there that's way out of harmony with God's definition of love. And there's moral corruption, ethical corruption in them. But they don't see it that way. They just think that is a normal thing to do, when you're dissatisfied with one relationship, just move on to another, rather than sorting out what's going on within oneself first. So our definitions of love are completely corrupt in so many different areas. So in this area here, the definition of love basically is you give me what I want. Then I'll accept that you love me. And if you don't give me what I want, then you don't love me. That's my definition of love. Right? And then you also, if you have that definition, you have to accept that others have that desire from you. In other words, others are saying to you, you do what I want, and then that proves that you love me. So it's a terrible thing that we do to each other here by bartering love, because barter is not love. Love is a gift, and most of us don't even understand that. At our core level, we do not understand that love is a gift. Does that make sense? In this area here, love is demanded. It is an expectation. It is a need, which is very, very different to it being a gift. All of those things are corrupt. They all drive corrupted actions and actually quite evil responses at times, because the opposite of what we do in those places is quite evil in many cases. Right? So example of that. We're a woman who's had sex and got pregnant, but we don't want to be pregnant. Her love of self says, I'm allowed to get rid of this child. That's what her love of self says. Does that make sense? That's what her love of self says. So if her love of self says that, then basically she's saying to herself that because I love myself, that justifies the murder of another. The taking away of their will to decide whether they want to live or die now is in my hands, which is exactly the same as you as an adult shooting somebody, really, in the end, because you're taking away their decision to live or die from themselves, and you're placing it in your own hands. So exactly the same decision, but the moral corruption, the definition of love, causes the idea that it's okay. And then we come up with a whole heap of justifications that it's okay. You know, justifications such as, you know, they're not alive yet, they're not a real person yet, and all of these other justifications. But they're all corrupt justifications. So the problem is my false definitions of love, which obviously here, you can see this is here in this diagram, down the bottom here, false beliefs and definitions of love driven by our pain. So the false definitions of love, the corrupt definitions of love, have been created by the pain that we have, and unless we release the pain we have, we can't change the definitions of love that are inside of us. The pain dictates what love, what we believe love to be, right? But unfortunately, in the state of my facade, all of my definitions of love are pretty much corrupt. It's very rare to find one that's not, actually, corrupt in some way. Because the point of it here is to maintain the corrupt definitions of love, actually. The point of the facade is to help deny that these false beliefs and false definitions of love actually exist. That's the point of it. So we do that. What's the next one? Very similar, isn't it? So what is it? If we go right at the back, thanks, Joellen.
My beliefs of what is true and real are corrupt.
Yeah, true. So my definitions of truth and reality are corrupt as well. My definitions of truth and reality. What you think now is real is totally defined by what your pain is telling you is real. But we're denying our pain, so we're not even aware that that's what's actually happening until we begin feeling the real pain. Once you start feeling the real pain, you'll notice these things. You'll notice, wow, I thought that was real, but it's not. That's just my assessment. And my assessment is based upon the pain that I'm trying to suppress. My assessment is completely controlled by that. Interesting, eh? That even my logical thought now is not possible. So many of us pride ourselves on the use of our intellects, but many of us are totally illogical because the pain is dictating how we use our intellect. The suppression of pain and the false beliefs and the false definitions of love tell us what we believe is logical when it's not. Right. So for example, if I give some examples, we believe it's logical to go to war when you're being attacked. You believe it's logical to defend yourself when you're being attacked. And even to defend yourself violently when you're being attacked. You believe that's logical. That's because the pain definition of love, the false definition of love, is telling you that it's logical. From God's perspective, it's the most illogical thing you could do. All it does is encourage more attack. I kill your child, you kill my child. I kill your family, you kill my family. I kill your country, you kill my country. It escalates violence, right? From God's perspective, it's illogical to escalate violence. From our perspective, we think it's logical. We even use the terms coming from the Bible, even, of eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, life for a life, thinking that that's logical, when a life for a life ends up with everybody dead. Not very logical, right? Catherine?
Are all of these also a facade connected with fear? Because a lot of these things seem to be a fear type base as well.
Well, a lot of the state of the facade is actually at the core driven by the avoidance of pain, by the avoidance of releasing pain, because the false beliefs can only be released, the false definition of loves can only be released when you release pain. So the real desire of the pain is to believe these false things. And then, of course, we don't even want to recognise our pain, but rather we live in these false beliefs. And these false beliefs drive the facade's desire. This is what I'm saying. The desensitisation to pain creates a layer which then drives everything above it. So these false beliefs and false definitions of love drive everything above it, including drive the terror. Right? Everything's driven by what's below. Yep. If we come down to Sherry.
Just to clarify, is the pain that we're avoiding our hurt self, or is it the pain we create from sin, or is that the same thing?
Well, the pain we create from sin and our hurt self is the same thing. Our hurt self is, a lot of our hurt in the hurt self is the pain we've created from our sin. Remember, we said the cause of pain yesterday, the creation of my pain is my
personal sin.
My personal sin, primarily. So yes, there is a relationship between those things, of course. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
What's the next thing in our list? Because we get to this definition of sin now, don't we? Right, so we go up the back there. Yep.
My definitions.
You might need to stand for them. Both of them can't see you. Thanks, Pam.
My definitions of sin are corrupt.
My definitions of sin are corrupt. Yep. So this is very important too. My definitions of sin are corrupt. In other words, what I think is good is actually most of the time sin, and what I think is really, really, really bad is, from God's point of view, most of the time good. We're totally mixed up when it comes to our definition of what sin is and what sin isn't. And the reason why is because in this false beliefs and false definitions of love, which drives the following sins and so forth, in that place we've got to hold on to those false beliefs and false definitions of love in order to suppress the pain. They reinforce our pain. And so we hold on to them, and it creates more and more sin, but we're thinking that we're doing the right thing. So this is what I observe for many of you. You think you're doing the right thing, and frequently you're not. You think you are, but you're not. From God's perspective, just not. Yeah. But you believe you are because your pain and your false definitions of love and truth is saying that you are doing the right thing. You are doing what they define as right. Yeah. Monique, thanks.
Just a clarification on the diagram with the false beliefs and definitions of love.
Yep.
Are they the ones that were from our childhood, from our family of origin, from our society, all our false?
Both from
Yeah.
those sources and also our own choices. What we learn through making decisions and choices, and what the world then reflects back to us about those decisions and choices, frequently is false. So what the world believes, for you, what the world believes is the loving thing for you to do, that's what you believe the loving thing is to do. Now that then causes you to act upon that and create more sin and more pain, and therefore reinforces the belief. Right? So you can't just say that it's just family origin or whatever, it's also choices, your own choices.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then the pain, the relationship with the pain then, that which drives, if I act on those false beliefs and definitions,
Yep.
then that creates more pain.
Of course, you're
That's
sinning
what you're
again. All this above is sinning again. Every one of these things above the pain itself is sinning again. Every time you sin again, what does it do?
Creates more pain.
Creates more pain.
Yeah.
Every time you sin again. So what we're doing is we're running around in a circle, sinning again, sinning again, sinning again, sinning again, hoping that we'll become happier. But all that's really happening is the degradation of our soul, and we're becoming sadder.
Could I ask one more question?
Sure, you
about
can.
the pain? So the pain then, I guess what Sherry was asking was, if I'm wanting to go to the pain about my childhood experiences, false definitions of, release the pain about false definitions of love from my childhood.
Say what you were going to say from your childhood experiences. That's fine.
Okay. if I release, I got mixed up. If I'm going to that pain, but I'm not going to the pain that I'm causing by my actions,
which is something you do all the time.
Which is something I do all the time.
Yep.
You mean going to the wrong pain?
Yeah, you want to place blame on others for your pain,
yes.
And therefore you think every single thing that's the main problems in you is somebody else caused it.
Yes.
When actually you're causing most of your own pain, and you're unwilling to look at all of those things by what you're doing to others. Does that make sense?
That's what I was asking. Yes.
Yeah.
And
you're doing that.
That's what I'm doing. So the pain then, it's not even real pain. It's like you said to Alex, a facade
Well, no,
pain.
sometimes it might be real and sometimes it might be imagined. And sometimes you think, family has hurt you or somebody has hurt you in a certain way when they haven't hurt you at all. You've in fact hurt them. Right? And this is the trouble with this whole construction, is you then believe when somebody doesn't do what is loving to you, what you define. Remember, your definitions of love are false. So you want them to do what you think is loving. They do the loving thing to you, and actually what you're demanding of them is actually for that they sin and that you get the results of their sin. That's really what you're demanding. And then you're crying when they don't give it. Well, that's just a tantrum, not getting what you want from a person. That's got nothing to do with childhood emotion, childhood injury. But you believe it has. And you've stayed in that cycle for years that I've observed, and you've not yet changed. So that tells me it's not real. It's just what you prefer to believe. You still treat people almost as badly as you did the first day I met you. So that tells me that there's been very little change. Does that make sense? Yeah. And this is what we need to be aware of, is that our definitions of sin are even corrupt. Like what we think somebody else's sin is not somebody else's sin, it's usually ours. And so for example, your partner cheats on you and leaves you and you're left devastated. What do? You believe it's their sin. That's not why you're devastated. You're devastated because of your sin. Your false belief that a person has to be faithful or a person has to be whatever they have to be. Like a person who truly loves another doesn't expect the other person to be faithful or not faithful. The person who truly loves somebody would be faithful. But the reality is I wouldn't get hurt if if I'm in a relationship, I wouldn't feel hurt if you're not unfaithful. Because love doesn't expect anything from you, including expect you to be faithful. Right? Love is a gift, right? So how can it expect anything? If it expects anything, it's not a gift anymore, it's a demand. If it's a demand, where is it? It's up here, it's barter. And therefore not reality. But we believe a person who leaves us and cheats on us has sinned against us. No, we've sinned way before then by having an attitude, an emotion within us that demands that a person is faithful and that we have the right to get upset and the right to get angry if they're not. All of which is addiction. Now, I'm not saying in a proper relationship that both parties wouldn't be faithful. Of course they would be. If they both loved each other, of course they would be. What I'm talking about is your response to it. And as soon as it's an angry-based demand, you're out of harmony with love immediately, sin. So our definitions of sin are so corrupt that even in relationship, we've got no idea what love would do. We've only got an idea of what barter or what addiction would do. That's really all we know. Make sense? And the key is to not judge all this. The key is to see it. The point of accepting our facade is to see it. Now, there's two more. Let's go through them quickly because there's more that we need to cover here. So what are the two extras? If we go to in the front there to Ange. Thanks.
I tell myself lies about my real emotions and feelings.
And what's the next one as well?
I want to use my will to sin.
Yes. Lies about real emotions. The point of the facade is to deny our real emotions. So, of course, we're telling ourselves lies about them. And then, of course, we also even lie to ourselves about whether we really want to sin or not. We have a will to sin. This facade has a will to sin. So inside of us, while this facade remains inside of us, there is a desire coming from within inside of us, an aspiration coming from within inside of us to actually sin. We want to. We want to sin. So how are we going to stop sinning when we want to sin? This has borne so many false beliefs, even religious false beliefs on the planet. You know, the whole concept that we were created flawed by God and that you need somebody to redeem you from your flaws, right? The whole concept of a blood sacrifice, paying for your sins, is all about, why is it that I have a will to sin? There must be some flaw in humanity causing me to have a will to sin, and then I need someone else to rescue me from the fact that I want to sin. When actually it's my desire to sin. Surely I need to be the person who rescues me from it. You follow? Okay, so it's looking pretty bad, right? Isn't that right? So, no, it's like, and we now get even more worried, because it looks really bad. That's the state of my facade. Looks pretty bad. And there's my first problem. Yeah. So, Ivana, thank you.
When you mentioned that we lie about our real emotions.
Yep.
So you're not just talking about negative emotions, are you? Or
no.
Like we lie about our real positive
somebody
emotions.
says to you, I think you're in love with that person. No, I'm not. I love my husband. There's a lie about a positive emotion. Like love's a positive emotion.
Yep.
Okay. Julie, next. Keep your hand up, Julie, so you're going to remember your mic runners don't always know who you are.
So because I live in my facade 99.9999%.
See, I wouldn't agree with that.
Oh, good.
It's probably 99.9998. So.
Oh, that's just so good. Thank you. Oh, you promise? When I'm not sinning, I'm just using my willpower.
Yes, most of us are just using willpower. Basically what we do inside of ourselves is we say, I really want to sin, but I don't want to acknowledge that I want to sin. So what I've got to start telling myself is that I really want to be a good boy or good girl. And then what you do is you use your willpower to be a good boy or good girl, but it doesn't work so long, right? You do it for a while, and sooner or later an event happens, particularly events that are sort of surprise you, events that shock you, or events that, in your face. These kind of events, bang, you're back sinning, and you go, oh no, there I go again. Right, there I go again. Your own definition of yourself is displeased. Yes. So your facade is displeased that you now look bad. And so what you do is you put another bit of facade on that and try harder with your willpower rather than actually addressing the real problem. This is what
That's me.
That's the average person, not just you. Yeah, it's terrible, isn't it, really? Yeah. So when we look at a state of our facade, we're looking at going, and it's sort of like, a shock and awe sort of feeling, isn't it, about it?